Welcome to the Preseason REI Podcast. Our goal is to bring you actionable information you can use in your business today. The guests will bring you the truth without the BS and fluff, so you know exactly what to do to get started or even grow your business without going through the same expensive mistakes we have all made. So sit back, grab a drink, and relax while your hosts Chris and Mel McGeady bring you the best information about real estate investing today.
All right, cool. So on the show today, we have a Mr. Paul Good. Let's start out easy. Why don't you tell everybody what market you're in and kind of what your strategy is in real estate right now?
Sure. So I'm in the Pennsylvania area, more specifically the Allentown area, which geographically is about 30 miles north of Philadelphia, which isn't far from where you guys are. My strategy, so I've been doing this for about 4.5 years now. First couple of years was pretty heavy on the wholesale and flipping side. Over the last year, it's been a mix of all three, really: wholesaling, flipping, and acquiring rentals. And recently, I've just kind of turned it on over into acquiring more rentals. So I do a little bit of everything, or try to.
We say 4.5 years. So what did you do before real estate?
So for the most part, I spent about 15 years in logistics and supply chain, starting off as a forklift operator and then ended up being all the way on up to vice president of national operations. So a lot of travel, a lot of big bonus checks, a lot of stress. That's one of my kids back there. So yeah, I did a lot of management, a lot of hiring, a lot of firing, a lot of process development. Effectively, I was in charge of creating a brand new warehouse from the ground up. So kind of like starting brand new mini businesses all across the country.
No, that's great. Now, I'd imagine once you climbed up in the ranks there in your job, it was a pretty good living, no?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I certainly made a pretty good income. I think at the peak of my career, I was making somewhere around 140 a year.
Oh, wow.
I kind of walked away from it. So yeah, it was good money. I mean, certainly as you climb the ranks, it gets a lot more lonelier at the top. You can't go out partying with your subordinates on a Friday night. You can't go out and have drinks with them. There's a separation of, higher end management and, the workforce, so to speak.
So you went into real estate so you could party with the subordinates.
That's absolutely right. Real estate.
I see.
Yeah. No, honestly, I got out because, two reasons. I mean, the higher you graduate in any corporate environment, typically the more political it gets. And I don't really have a filter on this. So politics don't work really well for me. That coupled with the fact that I was going through a divorce at the time really allowed me the freedom to go out and do whatever it is I wanted to do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say your strong suit is in real estate?
Relative to real estate, it's definitely the people skills. I really shine in front of people. I think that's just one of the skills I learned coming up through the corporate world is you have to learn to don a lot of hats with your employees. And sometimes I was managing employees, 100 deep. So sometimes you need to be their best friend. Sometimes you need to be their psychological advisor. Sometimes you need to be their coworker, their brother. Sometimes you need to be their father figure. Sometimes you need to be their boss. So really, is applicable in that world and this world, you kind of find out what hat you need to wear for the person in front of you. And then you wear that hat to get what you need or what performance you need out of that employee. The same is kind of true when we're dealing with sellers or contractors, right? So when we're in front of a seller, you got to don whatever hat it is they need. Sometimes they need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes they need somebody in front of them to unload all their problems onto. Sometimes they just need a financial advisor relative to the situation of the house. So it's about finding out what hat they need you to wear and then wearing it. The same is true with contractors. Sometimes you can be buddy with them and all is great in the world. And then sometimes you need to put the hammer down and say, dude, listen, at the end of the day, you work for me. So again, it's just about kind of, reading that person and figuring out what hat they need to wear and wearing it. I think I've always kind of been pretty good at that.
So let me ask you almost the same question, but a different way.
Sure.
Right. So when you have that corporate job and you go in, there's a format to it. You know what you're going to go in, you know what you have to do, you leave for the day, and that's done. As a business owner, you realize really quickly as you get into it, you do everything. So
Sure.
what are some things that you didn't expect as you kind of stepped away from the corporate world and became your own boss?
That's a great question. So I remember the first week that I sat at this desk, the first day, in fact, and thought, how am I going to find 40 hours worth of work to keep me busy during the week? Like, there's no way. Like, I'm going to run out of things to do. Well, here I am 4 years later, and I mean, 40 hours doesn't even breach the surface of the amount of things that you need to cover in one day. Because when you sit down at the desk initially, you don't realize that you do have to wear all of the hats. So I guess one of the things that I didn't realize would be so time intensive for me was the transactional tracking. So daily entries into QuickBooks and keeping the finances clean. That was something I had done loosely before that. But when you start adding 4 or 5 projects on the books at one time, and you're shelling out money this way and that way, keeping track of all that can be time consuming. So I would say I wasn't expecting to spend an hour and a half each day just tracking transactions and making sure the books were clean so that I could run like P&L statements. And I still hate doing that. I can't stand it. But yeah, that'd be an example of one of them. I'd say the other one was I had no idea. I had no idea how good, or I guess how good of a marketing person you need to be. And in hindsight, whether you're running a real estate business or you're running a cafe shop, marketing is really the key to the growth of your business. Some businesses market via word of mouth. Others are more aggressive with billboards and radio ads and flyers throughout a neighborhood. And when I sat down at this desk for those first couple months, I didn't realize how important understanding marketing was until I realized that, wow, if I don't generate business on my own, this isn't going to go very far. So that was a big surprise. In expecting to learn about real estate, I ended up learning a lot more about marketing, way more about marketing than I did about real estate. So that was a big surprise.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. We're in the same boat. And I mean, the three of us, we all started around the same time.
Well, in terms of marketing, what I know that you're doing some postcards. I would like you to touch on beyond postcards, what else you are doing, and then also if you're not doing anything, it's okay. But just in addition to that, what do you feel in the real estate world as far as investing? Do you feel like branding is also important? So, when you're doing marketing, you're just hitting that one person that you're trying to get them to sell. Do you feel like in this business, branding is also just as important?
Sure. So good question. So basically, what kind of marketing avenues am I going down, and is branding a part of that, so to speak? So, I'm a direct mail guy. The reason why I'm a direct mail guy is because the mentor that I hooked onto, they were direct mail. And that made sense to me because it's tangible. I like things that I can touch, taste, feel, smell, see. And marketing made sense to me from that standpoint. So, when I started out, I started off printing stuff in my office and cutting it out and, licking envelopes and all that stuff.
We all started that way.
Yeah. So, that's still my primary source of marketing. I've dabbled a little bit, very minorly, into some electronic marketing as far as Facebook marketing and pay-per-click and Google search marketing. I dialed that back because I felt like I wasn't a good enough expert on the first one of direct mail. And I felt that unless I could master one, there was no need to be mediocre at two. So for me, I'm still on direct mail. I do need to outsource to another brand of marketing. Um, Outside of direct mail, I do a lot of driving for dollars. So, driving for dollars, I'll drive around a neighborhood I'm interested in, and I'll look for any signs of dilapidation or not caring, or just any signs that they don't care somewhat about that property. I'll jot that property down, that address down, and I'll throw that into my marketing campaign. And it's a little bit more targeted. So those are the ways that I kind of really market. As far as branding, I think branding is important within and amongst your colleagues, and as far as contractors go. I don't know enough per se about branding to know whether or not it has an effect on our end seller. The old lady who's sitting in the living room trying to sell us our house. I don't know that she necessarily cares about my company. I think she cares more about the message that I have in front of her. And if she can tell whether or not I've got good ethics and I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. But branding is good from a recognition standpoint. If you're certainly trying to build services outside of your normal, we'll say your normal real estate piece, I think that's good. I love the fact that you guys do really good branding. You guys are awesome at it. You learn a thing or two at it. So yeah, I think branding is important. It'll certainly become more important as our businesses grow in tandem.
I think you make a good point there as far as branding is concerned. Branding almost happens by default in this business.
Yeah.
So comparative to a restaurant, if I went to go eat at a restaurant and the food was phenomenal, I'm going to tell my neighbors that the food was
Sure.
phenomenal. And then where did you go eat? And then that name that gets put out there in the public. To where in our business, if you're dealing with a distressed seller, it's not something that everybody's going to be going out and shouting to the neighborhood per se. So branding happens just by default, and you putting it out there rather than word of mouth.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy when you start in this business to get lost in some of those glamorous things like branding. When you're first starting out, branding is just not important when you start out. It's not a revenue generating function. And nobody's going to call you simply because you've got a great branding logo. At that point, it just doesn't matter right yet. It'll come on its own. And then Mel, you had another question. What kind of real estate I'm focusing on, or?
No, I don't think so. I think you made that up.
Cool. That'll work.
I have a question. 4.5 years ago, you're working full time. You get to do this all over again. Would you do anything differently?
Yeah. So what I would do differently is, without a doubt, I would be more consistent in the last 4 years about my marketing. So when I say consistent, our business from a financial standpoint kind of goes like this. It's an up and down roller coaster. And, when you're on top of the roller coaster about to plummet, you'll spend more money on marketing. You'll buy that truck that you've been wanting to get. And I think in hindsight, I would have rather waited on things like that and spent more of that money to prepay for, let's say, a year of marketing so that it went out more consistently, more like clockwork. They say relative to direct mail marketing, you want to hit every about 6 to 7 weeks. And I would say on average, I'm hitting more like every 11 weeks. So, if I could start over again, yeah, I would do more consistent marketing. And I'd probably do a few less flips and pick up more rentals simultaneously.
Well, it only shows growth for you moving forward, because now that you realize that, that's going to make you better in the years to come. So 4.5 years from now, it's going to be a different story than where you're sitting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because, when I first got into this business, I had to replace a substantial income. So flipping and wholesaling was like, damn, I need to come up with $100,000 a year plus just to support the lifestyle. Well, what I've realized since then is, I don't need $100,000 to support the family bills. I need, a quarter of that. And the business needs some portion of that, but it certainly doesn't need to be $100,000 a year. So that's been interesting to learn. So
So in terms of teaching someone who's just getting into this and knowing what the roller coaster looks like, if someone wanted to quit their job and just jump into it, what sort of financial advice would you give to them in terms of, okay, like even if you have a couple houses in the pipeline, what are you looking for? Like when would they expect to really see the fruits of their labor? How many months?
Good question.
And that sort of thing.
Good question. So I'd say, you know, if you're getting to the point where you're thinking about quitting your job, chances are hopefully you've been doing some of that work prior to the desire to quit. I mean, you've maybe had a proof of concept, and you've put out marketing and you've completed a deal and you said, wow, this could really work if I just focused my attention on it. I think it's important to have, I think if you're starting from day one, I think you probably need a good 90 days, maybe 3 to 4 months for a transaction to go from its start point to its end point, until you really kind of see your first paycheck. Certainly that's true on flipping. And we'll say even from wholesaling too. So what I would recommend is somebody has, you know, ideally try to stash away 4 months of income that you can live on, and be willing to live on ramen noodles and spaghetti. Basically be willing to do whatever it takes from a financial struggle standpoint to make it through those 4 months and to keep that marketing and get the strategy and the daily grind things going. Don't worry about the money. It's going to come. If you put the work in every single day, I guarantee you the money will come. Have faith in it. I think it's important that before you quit, you did some kind of transaction that proved to you in your mind that this proof of concept works. That if I spend, you know, I don't know, 40 hours on licking and stuffing mailers, that the phone's going to ring. And if the phone rings, I'm going to go on appointments. I mean, you gotta have a little bit of faith that the people providing you instruction have been where you're at. So do what they tell you to do.
Now, if I could interject just a little, I'm going to rebut your statement just a tiny bit.
Sure.
And if you're new in the business, my suggestion would actually be more like 6 to 8 months of income saved.
Okay. Sure.
Because most of the time new flippers are spending a little bit more time in their flips. You're not going to see, you know, revenue come in probably for at least 6 months. Now you're going to have to be able to feed your family for 6 months. And now, can't forget that if you were to collect, let's just say 2 or 3 flips at once, and let's say you're being aggressive, now you have interest payments on those too. So you have to remember to pay 3 interest payments plus your mortgage and feed your kids and pay for everything. So we have to be realistic and make sure that you're able to save enough.
Absolutely.
Through at least 8 or 9 months, I would actually recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree.
The point we could add to that actually is that this is the beauty of real estate, right? It doesn't have to be, the end goal doesn't have to be that you quit your job. Maybe you love your job and you just want to create some wealth on the side.
Absolutely
possible. All of these strategies and these processes that we go through to build what we're building doesn't have to be a full-time job. You don't have to do it in volume. You can also do stuff on the side of your W-2s.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have a mutual friend who still has a great full-time job, great benefits, loves his job, but has allowed real estate to allow him to be not only a lender in some instances, but he picks up rentals and he does flips, all while maintaining his full-time job. So for him, it's really supplemental income because he already has great income. He enjoys working with his bosses and things like that. So, there's so many different avenues you can go down. I agree with that. Absolutely.
Now then, even if my plan was to say, let's just say someone took my plan and was like, all right, we'll save 9 months worth. What would be a good supplement for someone that just said, fine, they said, I'll just take the plunge and now they need income in the next 30 days. What would be a good recommendation?
I would absolutely. So, for me, I did a bit of everything. When I started, I had a 401k that had like 20 grand in it. So I liquidated that thing, which in my mind was about 4 months of income. So I sat down at the computer with Excel and figured out what my bills were and how much money I needed to spend on marketing. I listened very closely to my mentor and how many pieces I should send out. So I knew I had 4 months. I mean, it was sink or swim. So the first couple of deals that I got were wholesale deals. I got them under contract and I took them to the local REI meetup, and I stood up in front of everybody and said, "I've got this deal. Who wants to buy it?" Right? And at that point, I didn't care if I made $1,000, $4,000, $8,000. I didn't care. I figured anything was better than nothing. So I think wholesaling could be a good short-term gap, because typically from the time you get something like that under contract until the time you get a paycheck, you're probably 30 days, 3 weeks maybe. So that became a good short-term gap for me. So I did that in conjunction with a flip at the same time, and it worked out okay.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So, it's not an end all. Everyone has a different path. Everyone has a different plan. We all have different recommendations. It's really
Sure.
just, whatever everyone's comfort level is. Mine is definitely not as the same as Chris's. Chris is like, hey, we got 1 month saved up. Let's go. So, I mean, we all have different recommendations, and I just think that you have to do whatever makes the most sense to you.
Well, a lot of this is about risk tolerance, and that balance is probably what gets us through a lot of things, because if you go too far one way or too far the other, there's no pushing forward in this business.
Yeah, I think it boils down to one thing at the end of the day. We can say all this fun stuff and come up with all these strategies, but at the end of the day, there's one thing that's going to make somebody successful, and that's how bad do they want it. It's how bad they want it. It doesn't, when you want it really bad, when your goals are defined and clearly set and you're determined to get there, it really doesn't matter what obstacles put in front of you. You're going to find a solution, and you're going to find it to the finish line. You'll get there quicker. You might get there on your hands and knees. Somebody's honking outside. You might get there. You might get there running. But if you want it bad enough, you're going to get there.
Yeah, I agree.
Can we switch gears for a second? I'd like to ask you a question. It's April 2nd. It's no surprise that we're going through a very unique time right now. It's like living a page out of the history book when you were in school, right? In maybe a 2-week time period, our businesses, some came to a halt, right? And depending on what your strategy is, the word I like to use is pivot. You need to pivot quickly and know how you're going to push through this and get out on the other side. What are you seeing different in your flipping business right now, as opposed to, let's say, 3 weeks ago?
Sure. So on the flipping business, I've got 3 projects from a flipping standpoint. I've got 2 flips, and then one is a rental rehab, I'll call it. In addition to that, I had 2 wholesale deals that were in the process of either going to closing or we were still running title on them. And all of that literally just came to a grinding halt. Buyers, contractors all said, hey, time out. We're going to chill out for a minute and find out what's going on. So literally everything just stopped. Mm-hmm. So once kind of like those 2 weeks of kind of like unrest and panic, and people kind of settled down a little bit, I've got one of those projects is still kind of continuing. I've got a contractor that, while I didn't recommend he kept working, he said, listen, he needed to work to keep food on the table. So it's a vacant property, have at it. From majority part, from a flipping standpoint, most things have come to a halt. The wholesale deals have kind of come to a halt. There are not a lot of title companies that are willing to work through this. Some of them will. One of the wholesale deals we're going to work on closing from a remote standpoint. So we're going to do some docu-signing and some video walkthroughs. Again, I really need one of those to close, because, my money-making machine stopped working in the backyard. The tree stopped growing. So I really want that to close, and I'm going to find a way to make that thing close. So it's on me to put on a bunch of different hats to get that thing to the closing table so that I can get a paycheck, right? As far as pivoting goes, marketing is still going out. We're still answering the phone. We're still telling people that we're willing to buy properties. We're still telling people that we are able to buy properties. You know, instead of going to meet them face to face, we're doing something like this. We're doing a one-on-one video call.
Right.
We're walking to the house virtually. You know, there are plenty of investors all throughout the country that buy properties in other states without even leaving their living room. So there's no reason why we can't do the same. So it has pivoted a bit. Yeah.
So the 4+ years we've all been in this business, we've had pretty good markets. We can throw properties out there, they sell pretty quickly. Throw wholesales out there, they're fought for, they sell pretty quickly. Now you're telling me that our backs are up against the wall because there's something going on, and you're not just folding it up and quitting and saying it was a good run, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, but I'm not there yet, right? I'm not at the point where I can hang it all up, sell it all, and go live on a beach, which is the goal. And until that day comes for me personally, you know, I've got to do whatever I can to chase my dream. You know, I've got to crawl. I've got to, you know, I'll do whatever I have to. I mean, I got kids I got to feed. I got to figure out how this works, you know, adapt or die kind of thing, you know?
I think that's kind of the point I was getting at is nobody has a problem putting their good stuff out there. Right. But when your back's up against the wall is when your true character comes out. And
Sure.
These are the times that people can talk about, but how you act when it's happening really defines who you are and how you're going to operate your business moving forward.
Sure. And there's no rule book. So there's nobody calling me to say, hey, listen, these are the 5 things you should work on today in this crazy different climate. I mean, I'm making this stuff up as I go. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you I wasn't scared. If there wasn't some apprehension and some anxiety, and some real concern as to what's going to happen over the next couple months. I mean, you know, but I'm no different than anybody, right? Nobody knows any of those answers. I know I have fellow investors that have 400+ rental properties and they're panicking, right? You know, because if a good portion of their tenants don't pay rent, then they're defaulting on mortgages. So it's not just the little guys, it's the big guys too. But they're still getting up and going to work every day and doing whatever they can to, you know, keep the business afloat.
All right. Well, if you could give advice to a newbie investor, what would you think would be the one thing that is most important? I mean, you can't give any other information except this one thing. What would you say?
So I'm going to recycle this because it's as true as the day I heard it. Stop talking about it and just go do it. Take some form of action today. Period.
And you know what? It's as simple as that.
It is.
Some of us in the beginning need that proof of concept. You see a bunch of advertisements out there and you can do real estate with no money and you can do this with real estate and you can make your millions. Obviously, there's a lot of hard work in between that those advertisements don't tell you about, which is okay because if you're willing to do the work, the fruits are on the other side. But
sure.
Yeah, just get out there, take action and do it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was fortunate that I had a mentor that, I mean, I saw that it worked for them. And if it worked for them, there's no reason why it couldn't work for me. And I was willing to do whatever it was they told me to do, exactly how they told me to do it, and had faith that this person must know what they're talking about. Right? Like me, I'm analysis guy, so I could lose years inside of a spreadsheet or in books. And yet none of that's getting me any closer. So, you know, it's great that you're reading books, but that's not taking action.
Well, when you learn something, you have to
action.
do something with it.
Absolutely.
No, that's great advice.
I'd like to talk about a mentor. You keep mentioning mentor. How many mentors have you had or do you have? And what is the benefit to it? Like, why do you have one?
Wow. The better question is, what isn't the benefit of having somebody on your shoulder or behind you that has gone where you're going and been where you've been? You know, I've had 3 mentors throughout the course of my, we'll say, real estate career, developing a fourth one right now who it has a bit of a different take on things. Mentors are instrumental. They've been where you're going. They've made the mistakes. So there's an ability to go to somebody with a question that you're struggling with and say, how do I solve problem ABC? And they just lay out the exact solution and road you need to take to solve that problem. And it takes out the guesswork. It takes out the frustration, the stress, the headache. You just, boom, have the answer. And you go and execute the answer. Oh, it's insurmountable. I think every successful person has several people standing behind them or to their side that they can lean on for good information. I think that's important. And that applies not only in the real estate business, but really any walk of life. Whether you're working you're just a normal person, you've got a best friend that you can call and say, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And you can get that information. So yeah, mentors are important.
So you wouldn't recommend anybody to just grab onto someone and hold tight for the rest of their life. I think that as you grow and you learn new things and you develop as an investor, it's important to find someone who can guide you as you go along. And if that means additional
Absolutely.
investors, I think that it's good. And I think that we should, welcome that and allow other people to guide us in the direction that we're going in. It doesn't mean just
that's a good point, right? So when you get into this business, you think you have an idea as to what you want to do, and you find a mentor that kind of is emulating what you think you want to do. And as your knowledge grows in the business, you decide, that that's not your forte. You're not interested in direct mail marketing, that, you're really interested in pay-per-click. That really kind of turns your gears. So you go and find somebody who does pay-per-click, and then you latch on with them. And then you're following the pay-per-click route. And then, oh, but this guy does pay-per-click and he only does flips. I really want to do pay-per-click, but I really want to get into huge multifamily. Well, let's go find somebody who does that, because this guy's good, but I want to do what this guy's doing. So you go over here and you find this guy. So it's about finding a mentor that's going to track along with what you're looking to do.
And one that speaks to you. Maybe someone who even carries the same values and that sort of thing.
Sure. I mean, there's a local guy here that is doing exactly what I want to do, but our personalities just don't mesh.
Mm-hmm.
He's super smart. His portfolio is exactly where I want to be, but he doesn't have the same character attributes that I do. So it just wouldn't work. Right. So, he's a guy that I wave at and shake hands with in the RIA meetings, but, I love what he's doing, but we're going a different direction for different reasons. So
that's important too, because we preach all the time in this business. It's a relationship-based business. That's from beginning to end. No matter who you come in contact with, it's all relationship-based. And that's the most important one, especially when you're starting out. But I can't even say that. As we grow in the business and get these different mentors, you have to click.
Sure.
It's the best of both worlds, because once you click and you create that strong relationship, then you're both going to grow. Your mentor grows from teaching as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, there's a couple of, we'll say, newbies that kind of call me up every now and again. And, I learned from them just like that fight and that vigor and that fire in the belly that they have, that I'm just like, I remember being that excited at one point in time. And it kind of pumps you up too. That's kind of cool.
Is it okay if I lead into another?
Yeah.
Or you have something you want?
No, go ahead.
Oh, that's not okay, Mel. We're not allowed to be talking.
So in terms of a mentor, so now I wanted to lead into, I'm not sure if you're a part of any masterminds or if you're considering any masterminds, but what sort of advice? I mean, we're talking like, this is obviously next level stuff. So
sure.
When you get into a mastermind, what sort of things are you considering? What do you look at for those masterminds, and why do you feel that at some point in your business, a mastermind might make sense?
That's good. That's a good question. So, the funny thing is, as you grow in this business, or as any business grows, you want to look at a mastermind like a consulting firm for you, right? I mean, you want to link up with this firm or this mastermind group because they're going to give you ideas and constructive feedback on what's broken in your business and how you can really blow it or exit out, just like a consulting firm would. And whether you're in this business or any other business, paying for that kind of expertise or getting that kind of expertise typically costs money. Whether it's a consulting firm or you're being a part of a big mastermind group, typically they cost a lot of money. And that's not something newbies should get into right now. Start locally with a mentor that's going to be free of advice. They're going to just give that willingly. As you grow in your business, you're going to want to link up and rub shoulders with people who are doing mega big things, right? And their time is valuable because the same hour they're spending with you, they could be working on a multi-million-dollar project. So it's got to make financial sense for them to rub shoulders with you at some point. So as your business grows, be willing to put money every year towards business growth, whether it's a couple $1,000s or maybe $10,000 a year towards, business growth. And that's sometimes in mastermind groups or in software development companies or whatever it might be. But, as your business grows, you want to keep dumping money towards what I call continued education. So mastermind groups, once you're in one, they're huge, right? So, you're rubbing shoulders with, if you're at this level, you're rubbing shoulders with people who are up here. And naturally, just by doing that, you're going to rise to that level of success, right? Because they're going to help shortcut some of those learning curves that you have.
Right.
So, yeah, those are huge.
Yeah.
Those are huge.
And
And you'll always make your money back. I don't care. You always will. If you think, wow, man, 10 grand to join this mastermind group, that's crazy. Yeah, but if you go into that group and you do what they tell you to do, I guarantee you're not just going to make 10 grand back. You're going to make like 60 grand, right? So it's just, the juice is almost always worth the squeeze.
Yes. I think that's fantastic advice. Definitely you want to invest in yourself. I think in this business, it's so important to invest in yourself. And it doesn't mean, I'm not saying you have to join a mastermind. Like that was just one of the options that you could be doing. But it's so important to set some money aside, invest in yourself, go to some, weekend seminar, or whatever that may be with some of these masterminds or these people who offer those they also do these weekend seminars. Sure. That you just want to go see what they're about, see what they have to offer, or they're teaching something that you're interested in. So
sure.
It's a nice
I think the other piece of advice I'd give relative to joining a mastermind is trust but verify the mentors, right? Yeah. So, the mentor you're jumping in bed with or paying whatever money to, how relative are they to what you're trying to do, right? Mm-hmm. If you're trying to, let's say, for example, 10x your flipping business and do, go from, 2 flips a year to 20 flips a year, well, how many flips are they doing? And are they actively doing them in the market? Is this something they're doing today, or is this something they did 10 years ago? Because it's a whole different world than it was 10 years ago. And I think it's important to latch onto a mentor that's doing what it is you want to do currently in that market. So, they're talking the talk and walking the walk. That's important.
Yep, I agree.
It's definitely something important in our business. And at the point we're at, we are a part of a mastermind. But to rewind that a little bit, it's all based on relativity and perspective. So if you're just starting out, and you touched on this before, you're going to want to stepstone your way up to that. It's fun to talk about. And I would hope that everybody that is interested in getting into the business gets to that point where they get to decide whether they want to be in a mastermind or not. But you know what? Start easy. The tickets are free for RIA meetings for the most part, right? You go to your local RIA meetings, start looking there, and then just kind of climb your way up.
That's a great place to start. That's the best place to start. RIA meetings are like my church. I leave there and I'm just pumped full of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And sometimes we got to go back to that.
Yeah.
Well, let's close with this. Where do you see your business in the next 5 years?
In 5 years, that's a great question. So in 5 years, currently with the way I'm looking at where my business is, and it seems to change direction a bit every year, based on, lessons learned and new goals. It's a hell of a lot more rental properties than I got right now. I could tell you that. in the last 2 weeks, I've learned just alone that, flipping is good. Flipping is good, but rentals are, let me answer your question this way. I don't know any wealthy flippers. And I have yet to meet any really wealthy wholesalers that don't have to restart the clock come January 1st. I do, however, know a lot of wealthy landowners that have hundreds of properties, and they don't freak out as much. So the goal is a lot more rental properties, for sure. I've got a 15-year plan. I want to be done at 55. I've got a lot of work to do to get there. And whether or not I get there or not, I'll get pretty close to it. So
would you agree with this saying that flipping and wholesaling replaces your income, rentals replaces your calendar?
I've never heard that before. Replaces your calendar. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. What I find is that flips and rentals replace your income until you have enough rental doors that does that for you. Right. So, if you're leveraged out on your properties and making, $100 a door, which for me is a win after I've accrued for everything, in order for me to replace my income, I'm going to need, at least 60 doors.
Mm-hmm.
So then I don't have to flip anymore. So yeah, the goal is to flip and wholesale until I've got enough rental doors that I don't have to flip and wholesale anymore. Then I just flip and wholesale if I want to get like a boat or a new car or a new child.
Well, I think that sounds great to all of us.
I think we should just mention here that we are in the crisis of COVID-19 and the kids are home for 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're sending up the smoke signals and nobody can come within 6 feet.
You sure?
Look back at this in a year and just realize how crazy this whole moment was.
No, I know.
What's great about this too is I can look at my children and be like, 6 feet, please. 6 feet.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for being on the episode, Paul. We really appreciate it. Why don't you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you?
How you can get in touch with me? Most people just dial 911. But if you don't want to do that, you can either call, text me, or email me. You can call or text at 484-620-1228. Call me anytime. Anytime. Even if it's like really late in the morning, you can call. Leave a voicemail. Call. You can email if you want. Paul at gcp-pa.com. So that's PAWL at gcp-pa.com.
All right, cool. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, no problem. You guys, thanks for having me on, and all the people out there, stay cheeky and keep working hard.
That's it for this episode. The best way to guarantee success is to jump over to preseasonrei.com for additional teachings. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast, and check us out on the Preseason REI Community Facebook page. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us.